Welcome to Chapter 6, Positive Discipline. There are 7 main learning objectives for this chapter that we'll be discussing. Positive discipline, the condition that exists when employees generally follow the rules and meet the standards of the organization, allows organizations to meet their objectives without constant disciplinary actions. The ideal situation is to have positive self-discipline, where employees regulate their own behavior out of self-interest and their normal desire to meet reasonable standards. This would allow the supervisor to supervise employees rather than having to assume the role of policeman in the department. Most firms have developed some formal code of ethics or conduct that spell out what behaviors are appropriate and what are not acceptable to the company. Supervisors must take appropriate actions in a timely manner because problems rarely go away by themselves, and other employees may view hesitation as encouragement to abuse rules. The disciplinary process involves a series of 5 steps through which a supervisor should progress. Supervisors should investigate the situation, conduct investigatory interviews, maintain self-control, communicate the disciplinary action to the offending employee in private, and keep the violation relevant for an appropriate period of time. Just cause is the standard for disciplinary action requiring tests of fairness and elements of normal due process, such as proper notification, investigation, sufficient evidence, and a penalty commensurate with the nature of the infraction. Disciplinary action should always have just cause or invite litigation against the firm. Progressive discipline is a system of disciplinary actions that increase the severity of the penalty with each offense. Progressive discipline begins with informal talks between the employee and supervisor, which may be enough to avoid future violations. If not, the supervisor may need to give the employee an oral warning or even a written warning if previous discussions have had no impact. More advanced disciplinary actions include suspension, transferring employees to other departments, demotion, or, as a last resort, termination. The hot stove rule approach for disciplinary actions is one way that supervisors can minimize the risk of employee resentment and other future challenges. Supervisors who use the hot stove rule give employees advance warning about rules and regulations and make known specific consequences of breaking these rules. The consequences must be immediate, consistent, and impersonally applied to all violators. Supervisors should keep records concerning employee performance, including incidents leading up to disciplinary actions. The burden of proof usually lies with the supervisor, and such records will help during grievance procedures. Throughout the process, if an employee believes that the disciplinary action was unfair, the supervisor should remind employees that they have the right to appeal the supervisor's decision and to ask for a decision from higher management. While progressive discipline consists of a series of increasing warnings and punishments, the discipline without punishment approach instead uses coaching and counseling. A significant feature of the discipline without punishment approach allows employees to decide for themselves whether or not to improve and stay or quit. When discipline exists within an organization, there's a state of orderliness. This is the degree to which employees act according to expected standards of behavior. Positive discipline is the condition that exists when employees generally follow the company's rules and meet the company's standards. Generally, there will be fewer disciplinary problems when morale is high and more problems when morale is low. Positive discipline is when employees regulate their own behavior out of self-interest and their normal desire to meet reasonable standards. Positive employee discipline requires supervisory example. Supervisors must consistently practice positive self-discipline as an example employees may emulate. To minimize problems in the workplace, supervisors should make sure that their employees are aware of the ethical codes and policies. Every corporation should have a policy that outlines its standards. There should be an ethics reporting system in place. There should be conflict of interest statements, and there should be an employee handbook that outlines rules of conduct. Some companies are beginning to monitor the email and internet activities of their employees through the use of programs like Little Brother and Message Inspector. Whether companies must inform their employees of this monitoring is still under debate, as are what employees' rights are in regard to privacy at work. Many companies have now developed formal codes of ethics that make it clear to employees and management what behavior is acceptable and what will not be tolerated. Most people perform best when they know what's expected of them. For this reason, most organizations prepare written lists of rules or codes of conduct that every employee must read and understand. Often, these regulations don't specify the consequences for violations of rules. Supervisors must deal with situations that require disciplinary action quickly and appropriately, rather than ignoring them or hoping they'll go away. Disciplinary action should not seek to punish, but should improve the employee's future behavior, and disciplinary action should also have just cause. Tests for just cause include questions like, did the company give the employee reasonable forewarning? Are the company's rules reasonable? Did the company try to discover whether the employee did in fact violate a rule? And was the investigation fair and objective? Additional questions might include, was substantial evidence provided of guilt? Has the company applied rules and penalties even-handedly without discrimination? And was the degree of discipline administered reasonable? In order to administer appropriate disciplinary actions, supervisors should investigate the situation, find out what happened and why. They need to ask the questions, are facts available and are they accurate? How serious is the offense? Did the employee know the rules? Are there extenuating circumstances? What is the employee's record so far? How have other employees been disciplined for the same or similar offenses, and is this offense different? And finally, is the documentation complete? Supervisors also need to conduct investigatory interviews, done in private and on an individual basis unless employees wish to have a union representative present. Supervisors need to maintain self-control at all times and communicate the disciplinary action to the offending employee in private or with an unbiased third party to record statements. Finally, supervisors need to keep the violation relevant for an appropriate period of time. Progressive discipline refers to a system of disciplinary action that increases the severity of the penalty with each offense. The early stages of progressive discipline include informal talks by the supervisor with the employee. They may be all that's needed to deal with minor offenses rather than allow the situation to escalate. Oral warnings are required for repeated violations and should be noted in the employee's file or logbook. Supervisors should emphasize the problem in a straightforward manner, indicating the consequences of continued violations. A written warning is a formal document containing a statement of the violation and the potential consequences of future violations that becomes part of the permanent record of the employee. Clear notice is given that future infractions will lead to more serious discipline, and the supervisor should continue to stress his or her desire to help the person become a valuable employee. In advanced stages of progressive discipline, there's the disciplinary layoff or suspension. This may be necessary if the employee has committed offenses repeatedly and previous warnings had no effect. Suspensions range in length from 1 to several days and are without pay. Transferring employees to other departments typically involves no loss of pay or skill and is usually done to alleviate a particular interpersonal difficulty. The supervisor who accepts the transferred employee can assist the person in adjusting to the transition, but the employee must still improve in the new job or be subject to discharge. Demoting an employee to a lower-paying job is usually avoided because it leads to continued dissatisfaction, which may spread to other employees. Discharge or termination is the most drastic form of disciplinary action. It should be used as the last resort and for the most serious offenses. In some firms, only higher management can fire an employee. An employee at will refers to the legal concept that employers can dismiss employees at any time for any reason except unlawful discrimination or contractual or other restrictions. The hot stove rule is a guideline for applying discipline similar to touching a hot stove. Advance warning and consequences which are immediate, consistent, and applied with impersonality. With advance warning, prior notification of rules and regulations makes it more likely that employees will accept disciplinary actions as fair. Immediacy refers to supervisors taking disciplinary action promptly when an offense is noticed. The sooner the discipline is imposed, the more closely it's connected with the offensive act. Consistency means that appropriate disciplinary action should be taken every time an infraction occurs. What action is appropriate will depend on the situation and the nature of the infraction. No-fault attendance policy is a policy under which unscheduled absences and tardiness are counted as occurrences and their accumulation is used in progressive discipline. Impersonality means that penalties should be connected with the violation, not with the personality of the employee involved. After the disciplinary action has been taken, the employee should be treated the same as before the offense took place. Documentation is keeping records of memoranda, documents, and meetings that are relevant to disciplinary action. The right to appeal is procedures by which an employee may request higher-level management to review a supervisor's disciplinary action. Discipline without punishment is the disciplinary approach that uses coaching and counseling as preliminary steps and a paid decision-making leave that allows employees to decide whether to improve and stay or to quit.